It looked like any other quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people waved from their driveways, where nothing ever really seemed to go wrong. But behind one of those doors, something happened that would leave even seasoned investigators shaken for decades. Because this wasn't just a robbery, and it wasn't just a murder. What made this case truly disturbing was one detail, one moment that investigators say they will never forget. And now, more than 30 years later, the man responsible is finally facing his last day. At the center of it all was Chadwick Willacy. Back in 1990, he wasn't some stranger lurking in the shadows. He was just the young guy next door, the kind of neighbor people barely thought twice about. He lived with his parents, did small jobs around the area, and even mowed lawns for people nearby, including Marlys Sather. She was 56 years old, independent and well-respected. She worked a stable job and had even earned a high-level government clearance. To everyone around her, she was living a normal, peaceful life. And that's what makes what happened next so unsettling. Because just one day before everything changed, Willacy had asked her for money, an advance for mowing her lawn. It wasn't a huge request, but something about it lingered. Then came the next day, and nothing would ever be the same again. September 5th, 1990. It started as a normal workday. Marlys Sather left for her job just like she always did, but around lunchtime she made an unexpected decision to head back home. She had a simple reason. She was planning to sell her car, and there was a for sale sign already sitting in the window. But when she walked through her front door, she wasn't alone. Someone was already inside, and it wasn't a stranger. It was the neighbor she trusted. In that moment, everything shifted, because now he knew something. She could identify him, and what happened next would turn this into a case investigators would never forget. What started as a break-in instantly spiraled out of control. Panic set in, and instead of running, he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He attacked. The situation became violent, fast. There was no hesitation anymore, just an attempt to silence the one person who could expose him. Marlys tried to survive, but she was overpowered, restrained, and left completely defenseless. And at that point, it wasn't just about escaping anymore. It had become something far darker. Because even after everything he had already done, he wasn't finished, not even close. Most people would have fled, but not Willacy. Instead, he took her car, the one sitting outside with the for sale sign, and drove it like nothing had happened. He even went to the bank and withdrew money using her card. Then, unbelievably, he went back to the house, back to the scene. That decision would become one of the most chilling parts of the entire case, because this wasn't panic anymore. This was calculation. Investigators later revealed that he began trying to erase everything, any trace that could link him to what had happened. Smoke detectors were disabled, the scene was manipulated, and what happened next would leave even experienced detectives shaken. When investigators pieced everything together, one detail stood out above all the others, something they couldn't shake, something that made this case different. The autopsy revealed that Marlys Sather was still alive during the final moments. Despite everything she had already endured, she was still fighting. Detectives later said it was one of the hardest things to process, not just what happened, but the realization of how long she held on. For Jorge Santiago, the detective who worked the case, it was his first solo homicide investigation, and it stayed with him forever. He would later describe the scene as something he couldn't believe, something that never left his mind. But while investigators were coming to terms with what they had uncovered, the suspect believed he could get away with it.
It didn't take long for things to start unraveling. Witnesses came forward,
Someone had seen Willacy driving Marlys's car shortly after the incident. That alone raised serious questions. Then came another break in the case, one that sealed his fate. His own girlfriend discovered items that didn't belong to him, including the victim's checkbook. She contacted police, and just like that, the walls began closing in. When detectives brought Willacy in for questioning, his reaction stood out. Cold, distant, almost dismissive. At one point, when told that neighbors had seen him arguing with Marlys, he brushed it off, saying it was none of their business. He denied everything. But the evidence was stacking up, and when he was finally arrested, he didn't protest, he didn't panic, he didn't even try to defend himself. He just stayed silent, and that silence spoke volumes. But even after the arrest, this case was far from over. In 1991, Willacy was found guilty. The charges were severe: murder, robbery, burglary, and arson. The jury recommended the ultimate punishment. But that wasn't the end of the story. Years later, his sentence was overturned due to a technical issue during jury selection. For a moment, it seemed like the outcome might change, but it didn't. At resentencing, the jury once again recommended the same punishment, this time by an even stronger margin. And still, the case dragged on. Appeals, motions, legal challenges. For decades, the process continued, stretching the case far beyond what anyone expected. Meanwhile, advocacy groups began raising concerns. Some argued that carrying out the sentence after so many years wouldn't bring closure. Others believed it was necessary for justice. The debate grew louder. But eventually, a final decision was made. In March 2026, a death warrant was signed. After 36 years, a date was finally set: April 21. For some, it marked the end of a long and painful chapter. For others, it raised new questions about justice, time, and whether closure can ever truly be achieved. But one reaction stood out above the rest. Detective Jorge Santiago, the man who helped solve the case, made it clear he wouldn't be there. He said Willacy wasn't even worth his time. After everything he had seen, everything he had experienced, he chose not to look back. And maybe that says more than anything else. Because in cases like this, the real question isn't just about punishment. It's about impact, about the lives changed forever, and whether justice, no matter how long it takes, ever truly feels complete.